everybody. My name is Makenna Marshall, and I'm an 11th grader here at Phillips Academy, Andover, and I'm from Washington, D.C. But actually, I'm not from Washington, D.C. I'm from Capitol Heights, Maryland, which is a small suburb of D.C. And I normally say Washington, D.C. instead of Capitol Heights because Capitol Heights has a little bit of a reputation. It's known as a crime-ridden, filthy, and dangerous suburb. Or at least it was before the changes began to occur that tempted my mother to moving into a new townhome there. Now, Capitol Heights isn't dirty or crime-ridden at all. It's a previously rough neighborhood giving way to the changes that an affluent and educated homeowner like my mother can bring. And the same thing is happening inside of DC right now. If you follow Addison Road down to JFK Stadium, you can see the bones of new apartment buildings rising. Older bars give way to coffee shops, and as crime rates go down, organic grocery stores go up. And to me, this all looked like a great thing. Finally, my city was getting itself together. But then someone asked me a pretty tricky question. Where did all the black people go? And my response was, I'm right here. But that's not what that person meant. What they meant was the historically lower income black people who have lived in DC since the Civil War period. And the reason that this demographic change has occurred is because of an interesting phenomenon that I began to study. See, the New York Times has said that the black population in DC has dropped by 11% in the last decade. This is because of a process known as gentrification. Some of you may know the term, and some of you may not, but the definition of gentrification is the rebuilding and renewal that accompanies the influx of middle class and upper class residents to a deteriorating area that can result in the displacement of lower class residents. And displacement isn't just moving. Displacement is unintentional and completely unavoidable. Displacement can also lead to a lack of jobs. Often lower income people who live in cities rely heavily on public transportation, and if someone has no access to public transportation, they lose their only source of income. In addition, gentrification is also affecting the middle class, not just lower class citizens. As rents and property taxes rise, middle income earners such as teachers who teach at inner city schools and police officers who protect our streets can no longer afford to live in these urban centers. But there are some people who say there are pros to gentrification. Some of them being that public schools tend to get better, all public amenities tend to get better, and we also see crime rates go down, and people who do manage to keep their homes throughout the entire process of gentrification do see their home values rise. But despite all of these pros and cons that could be debated for ages, we're talking about gentrification right now for a reason. And that reason is because there's been an extreme acceleration in the rate of gentrification in the past 2 decades. It's predicted in the biggest 30 cities across America, the rate of gentrification has doubled. And so we have to ask ourselves why. With the phenomenon that affects and disenfranchises so many people, there has to be a reason why. And that reason why is those pesky millennials. That's right, people ages 18 to 36 are no longer settling in the suburbs. This is part of a phenomenon called the suburban exodus, which is caused for a plethora of logistical and psychological reasons. One of them being that the suburbs tend to induce depression and dissatisfaction amongst its members. Another reason being millennials are just wholly uninterested in cars. Therefore, they don't really like commuting. Most importantly, millennials seek connection. We see this in their use of social media like Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. They want to connect, and it's hard to connect in the world of picket fences and cul-de-sacs. Thus, the suburban exodus has moved supply and demand for houses to cities, which is exacerbating gentrification. The demand before used to be for a 3 to 4 bedroom house with a yard out front and out back, an in-ground pool, and a good school district. Now millennials who are having children about 6 to 8 years later than their parents are shifting this demand to cities. Cities don't have an adequate supply, and this can lead to the displacement of lower class residents. And so now with this part of gentrification understood, after doing all of this research, I thought there had to be some type of solution. Well, the solution lies in the reason for the acceleration. What if we could change suburbs to make them more like cities so people would stop moving to cities? New urbanism is a new idea of architectural thought that involves building mixed-income homes, eco-friendly homes, and centering those homes around a community center or shopping center that matches all inhabitants' needs. New homes in new urbanist communities often architecturally promote connection. These are all things millennials want in their communities. If we could incentivize the government to incentivize builders to build more homes in the suburbs in these new urbanist communities, we might be able to shift demand away from cities, halting gentrification. Might. Might being the key word to all of this, because to get a plan like this passed, or to even poke holes in this plan, I need to get together with government officials, local leaders, people who live in those areas, and many more people. And often, those people are never in the same rooms together. And the reason why is because of blame. Politicians blame the private sector, the poor blame the rich blame the poor. It goes in this endless cycle. And I started to blame myself. You see, I fit the definition of a gentrifier. I have the privilege to be part of an affluent family that can move to a neighborhood that was changing to suit my needs while displacing others. And this privilege started to make me feel really guilty. And as I started feeling guilty, I started feeling defensive. And once I felt defensive, I felt like I was being attacked every time I read an article about gentrification or attempted to talk to social workers about gentrification. I felt like they were personally attacking me, not the problem. And eventually this actually halted my research. All my emotional turmoil about having privilege stopped me from being able to see the situation critically. I couldn't see solutions, and I couldn't even see the problem. But then I realized something very important. As a privileged person, it's not about me. If you're the privileged person, it's normally not about you. Learning this helped me see past my inner problems with gentrification. I got to see that my privilege was halting conversations that needed to happen. Most importantly, I need to focus on the people who didn't have privilege. So doing all this research and studying about gentrification shed light on a phenomenon that is impacting all of our American cities, but it also shed light on how privilege and internal problems with people who are privileged can just stop important dialogues. And I hope with our generation, this doesn't happen. I hope that with our generation, we can move past and over privilege and come up with more solutions so the world has less problems. Thank you.